Imagine stepping outside into your backyard on a frigid December morning, only to find what appears to be the lifeless body of a German Shepherd puppy lying still in the snow. No heartbeat, no breath, the body icy cold to the touch. Most people would accept the obvious and contact animal control. But when retired nurse Lisa Chen made this discovery behind her Minneapolis home, her decades of medical training told her to look closer, and what she noticed would change everything. What unfolded over the following 6 hours didn't just save one small life. It challenged long-held veterinary assumptions about hypothermia in young animals and became a case still studied in veterinary schools today. This is the extraordinary true story of Max, the puppy who seemed beyond saving, and the woman whose determination created a medical miracle. For 15 years, Lisa had begun her mornings the same way. A cup of coffee, then a quick step outside to check her backyard bird feeders before the Minnesota winter deepened. With 32 years of ICU experience, she had developed a sharp instinct for noticing when something wasn't right, even in ordinary situations. On December 18th, at exactly 6:23 a.m., she stepped onto her porch. The temperature was -8 degrees Fahrenheit, with a wind chill so brutal that bare skin stung almost instantly. The fresh snow from the night's blizzard lay untouched, creating perfect drifts across her yard. Everything appeared peaceful until she spotted a small dark shape near her garden shed. At first, Lisa assumed it was a child's toy or stuffed animal blown in from a neighbor's yard. But as she walked closer, her heart sank. It was a German Shepherd puppy, no more than 8 weeks old, curled into a tight ball and completely motionless. His black and tan fur was frosted with ice, his eyes shut, his tiny body showing no hint of breath or movement. With 3 decades in medicine, Lisa recognized death instantly. It was clear the puppy had been exposed to the bitter cold all night, and no creature that small could possibly survive such conditions. Yet something compelled her to kneel beside him. Training had taught her that no matter how hopeless a case appeared, life signs must always be checked. She pulled off her gloves and pressed her fingers gently against the puppy's neck, searching for a pulse. Nothing. She tried his chest, then his small wrist. Still nothing. His body wasn't just cold. It was deeply frozen. The kind of chill that usually meant hypothermia had advanced far beyond recovery. She lifted one eyelid, finding a fixed, glassy stare she had seen countless times in patients who had passed. Holding her breath, she watched his chest for any hint of breathing. There was none. Every medical indicator pointed to the same conclusion. This puppy had been gone for hours. But as she prepared to call animal control, something didn't sit right. His curled position seemed unusual. In her experience, animals that die of hypothermia rarely remain in such a perfect defensive curl. They tend to sprawl as the body shuts down. Even more puzzling was his location. He lay in the open center of the yard, far from fences or shelter, with no tracks or disturbance in the snow to suggest how he got there. Studying him more closely, Lisa noticed other odd details. His fur, though dusted with snow, wasn't dirty or matted, and his paws showed no wear from wandering outside. Most striking of all, the snow directly beneath him showed almost no sign of melting. His body temperature had fallen so low that he generated virtually no heat at all. Lisa thought back to her ICU days. She had seen hypothermia patients who seemed beyond hope, patients whose core temperatures dropped so severely they appeared clinically dead, only to be revived once warmed slowly and carefully. The phrase drilled into her training echoed in her mind. You're not dead until you're warm and dead. Looking down at the tiny, frozen puppy, Lisa made a decision that defied logic. Instead of leaving him to be collected as a lost cause, she would treat him as an emergency. Gently, she gathered the fragile body into her coat and hurried inside. If there was even the slightest chance of life, the next hour would be critical. What Lisa didn't realize was that she was about to carry out a rescue that would later be written about in veterinary journals as one of the most remarkable hypothermia survival stories ever recorded. Once inside, she transformed her kitchen into a makeshift intensive care unit, instinctively applying the skills she had honed in decades of critical care. Her focus was absolute as she began what would become a 6-hour battle to bring a seemingly dead puppy back to life. Her first step was a thorough assessment. She laid him gently on a thick towel under the bright task lighting above her kitchen island. The digital thermometer reading nearly stopped her heart. 84 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 degrees below normal canine body temperature. In human medicine, that number was usually fatal, but Lisa knew that smaller bodies sometimes withstood drops that larger ones could not. Then she noticed something that gave her hope: muscle tone. Though limp, the puppy's body wasn't stiff. His joints still moved freely, and his tissues retained a faint elasticity that suggested his cells hadn't fully shut down. Drawing on her ICU training, she began the delicate process of rewarming, a method that had saved human hypothermia patients countless times before. She warmed towels in her dryer, wrapping him carefully, mindful not to heat him too quickly. Rapid rewarming could trigger dangerous heart arrhythmias or tissue damage. She set a heating pad to low and positioned it near his core, making sure not to burn his fragile extremities. About 20 minutes into the process, Lisa thought she saw the faintest flicker near the puppy's eyes. She froze, staring for 2 full minutes, but nothing happened. Still, the image lingered in her mind. Experienced nurses often develop an almost uncanny ability to detect the smallest changes in their patients, and Lisa trusted her instincts. She kept up the warming process and added gentle stimulation techniques. Borrowing from her knowledge of neonatal resuscitation, she began softly rubbing his chest in slow circles to encourage circulation and heart activity. She massaged his paws as well, working to coax blood back into his tiny extremities. After 45 minutes, the thermometer showed his temperature had risen to 89 degrees. There was still no pulse, no breathing, and no eye movement. But something subtle had shifted. The dull gray color that had chilled her earlier was fading, replaced with the faintest blush of pink on his gums and eyelids. That's when Lisa decided to try something most people would have dismissed as impossible: canine CPR. Drawing on her ICU training in infant resuscitation, she carefully laid the puppy on his back and began tiny chest compressions using just 2 fingers, pressing to about 1/3 of his chest depth. She coordinated each round with gentle rescue breaths, covering his muzzle with her mouth and delivering small, controlled puffs of air. For 15 long minutes, there was no response. Lisa's confidence wavered. Then she felt something that made her heart skip. It was the faintest beat in the femoral artery. So faint she questioned whether it was real, but her trained hands detected 1 weak pulse every 8 to 10 seconds. Checking his gums again, she noticed the pink tint was stronger now. When she pressed on the gum and released, she saw a trace of capillary refill, the clearest sign yet that his cardiovascular system was beginning to recover. By then, his body temperature had climbed to 92 degrees. Lisa pressed forward with new determination. She prepared a makeshift IV line using supplies from her personal first aid kit, ready to provide fluids if needed. She also called Dr. Sarah Williams, an emergency veterinarian she had worked alongside in animal rescue, leaving a message about a critical hypothermia case. As she monitored the slow rise in temperature, she began to allow herself a sliver of hope. After 90 minutes of tireless effort, she realized she was witnessing something extraordinary: the gradual revival of a creature that had been as close to death as possible without crossing over. But the most astonishing moment had yet to come. At 8:47 a.m., exactly 93 minutes after finding the puppy frozen in the snow, Lisa saw something she would never forget. As she massaged his chest, the puppy's ribs suddenly expanded on their own. A breath, weak, tiny, but entirely independent of her resuscitation. Lisa froze, eyes wide. 10 seconds later, another breath. 15 seconds later, another. The puppy was breathing without her help. Her hands trembled as she checked for a pulse again. This time, there was no doubt. A heartbeat, weak but steady, thumping beneath her fingertips. Though slow, only about 40 beats per minute, far below the normal 120 to 160 for a puppy. It was consistent and gradually gaining strength. 20 minutes later, Dr. Williams arrived, having rushed over after hearing Lisa's urgent voicemail and realizing how significant this could be. With 15 years of emergency veterinary experience, she had never seen a puppy recover from such extreme hypothermia. "His core temperature when you found him was 84? Dr. Williams asked in disbelief as she examined the tiny patient. 84.2 exactly, Lisa confirmed. No pulse, no breathing, pupils fixed and unresponsive. By every standard I know, he was clinically gone." Dr. Williams performed her own assessment while Lisa continued the warming protocol. By now, the puppy's temperature had reached 96 degrees, still below normal, but high enough to support basic cellular function. His heart rate had climbed to 65 beats per minute, and his breathing, though still shallow and irregular, was clearly improving. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Williams murmured, astonished. Puppies this young almost never survive severe hypothermia without fatal complications or permanent brain injury. But his heartbeat is organized, and he's breathing on his own. It suggests his brain is still functioning. The next critical test would confirm that theory. Dr. Williams reached for a pen light and carefully checked the puppy's pupils, shining a small beam into his eyes to see if they would react to light, a key indicator of neurological integrity. For several moments, there was no reaction at all. Then, almost imperceptibly, his pupils began to tighten. "Neurological activity is present," Dr. Williams said with excitement. "Slow, but unmistakably there." As monitoring continued, more signs of improvement appeared. The puppy's breathing steadied, settling into a rhythm of one breath every 4 to 5 seconds. His heartbeat grew stronger, climbing to 80 beats per minute. Even more encouraging were the tiny responses to touch, his head shifting slightly when his ears were stroked, the faint curl of his toes when pressure was applied to his paw pads. By 10:30 a.m., 4 hours after he was first discovered, his core body temperature had risen to 99 degrees. While still below the normal range, his vital signs were becoming stable. Dr. Williams inserted an IV line, beginning fluid therapy to support circulation and balance electrolytes. The first dramatic breakthrough came at 11:15 a.m., when his eyelids began to flutter. His pupils remained dilated and his gaze unfocused, But the fact that he was regaining consciousness was astonishing considering the condition he had been in. "Lisa," Dr. Williams said softly, "you need to understand what you've accomplished. In 15 years of emergency veterinary medicine, I've never seen a puppy revived from hypothermia this severe. This case is going to change how we approach treatment in young animals." As the tiny German Shepherd's eyes moved slowly around the room, both women realized they were witnessing something that would be studied and written about for years. Yet they also knew his recovery had only begun, and the following 24 hours would determine whether this miracle ended in full health or lasting damage. Still, one troubling question remained. How had a healthy 8-week-old German Shepherd ended up nearly frozen in Lisa's secure backyard? The answer, they soon learned, was far more disturbing than either had expected. Dr. Williams reached out to Detective Maria Rodriguez of the Minneapolis Animal Control Division, an investigator specializing in abandonment and cruelty cases. That afternoon, Detective Rodriguez arrived at Lisa's home to examine the situation. "The location doesn't add up," she said, studying the backyard. "Your fence is 6 feet high with no openings, and both gates are firmly latched. This puppy couldn't have gotten in here on his own." Evidence soon confirmed her suspicion. Fresh tire marks in the alley behind the house suggested a recent vehicle stop. Even more telling were the adult-sized boot prints in the snow, leading directly from the gate to the spot where the puppy had been found. Someone had intentionally placed him there. Meanwhile, Dr. Williams continued to monitor the little dog, now named Max by Lisa, as his condition improved. By late afternoon, his body temperature had reached 101.5 degrees. His heart rate steadied at 110 beats per minute, and he began moving with intention. The investigation took a crucial turn when Detective Rodriguez reviewed recent missing pet reports. Just 3 days earlier, the Thompson family had reported their German Shepherd puppy missing. When she contacted them, the truth came out. Their landlord, Brad Hensley, had forced them to give up Max after neighbors complained about his nighttime crying. Hensley promised to rehome the puppy, but under questioning, his story unraveled. Security footage from a nearby business confirmed Rodriguez's suspicion. At 2:30 a.m. during the blizzard, Hensley's car was recorded in Lisa's neighborhood. The video showed him tossing the puppy over the fence before driving away. "This wasn't abandonment," Detective Rodriguez told Lisa gravely. "This was attempted animal homicide. He knew that puppy wouldn't survive in those conditions. He was relying on the cold to kill him rather than paying for euthanasia or shelter surrender fees." Medical evidence supported the charges. Dr. Williams explained that Max had likely been outside for about 4 hours in -8-degree weather before Lisa discovered him. For a puppy that age, survival under those circumstances was virtually impossible. "His survival is 1 in a million, Dr. Williams told the detective. "The only reason he's alive is because Lisa found him when she did and had the knowledge to start immediate treatment." As the investigation unfolded, Max's recovery advanced at an astonishing pace. By evening, he could raise his head and follow movement with his eyes. He responded to touch and showed recognition when Lisa spoke. Most importantly, neurological testing revealed no signs of brain damage despite his prolonged hypothermia. Eventually, criminal charges were filed against Hensley for cruelty and endangerment. But for Lisa, the most important discovery wasn't the legal outcome. It was the realization that Max hadn't just been discarded. He had been intentionally left to die. That knowledge made his survival even more profound. This was not simply a rare medical success. It was proof of a will to live and of the extraordinary impact of someone refusing to give up on a life others had written off. Over the next 72 hours, Max continued to surpass every prediction, his recovery defying veterinary textbooks and giving Dr. Williams reason to document each milestone with care. She realized she was witnessing a case that future veterinary students would be studying for decades. On the second day, the first major breakthrough occurred. Max began drinking water on his own. Dr. Williams had prepared for the possibility of kidney damage due to his extreme hypothermia, but to her relief, every test showed his organs were functioning normally. His appetite soon followed, starting with small servings of high-calorie puppy formula and gradually progressing to solid food by the end of the week. Yet, the most astonishing part of Max's recovery wasn't his physical progress, it was his brain function. Despite having been clinically dead for an uncertain period and suffering from temperatures that had stopped his breathing and heart, Max displayed no neurological damage whatsoever. His mental development was completely normal. He learned house training with ease and quickly showed the intelligence and problem-solving skills expected from a healthy German Shepherd puppy. To be thorough, Doctor. Williams brought in Dr. Robert Chen, a veterinary neurologist at the University of Minnesota, to perform detailed neurological testing. The results stunned the team. There's absolutely no sign of brain injury caused by oxygen deprivation, Dr. Chen reported after completing his evaluations. His motor skills, sensory responses, and cognitive processing are all perfectly normal. Neurologically, it's as if the hypothermia never happened. Word of Max's case began to spread, drawing attention from veterinary researchers across the country. The American Veterinary Medical Association reached out to Dr. Williams, eager to document Max's survival and recovery, so his case could influence new emergency treatment protocols. Lisa, without intending to, became an authority on canine hypothermia recovery. The methods she improvised that night, drawing from her background in human nursing, such as gradual rewarming, adapting CPR for a small animal, and meticulously tracking vital signs, formed the basis of new veterinary procedures. What Lisa did wasn't just intervention, Dr. Williams explained to the research team. It was the perfect balance of knowledge, instinct, and timing. She noticed signs of life most people would have missed, and she had the skills to respond immediately. As Max grew stronger, his true nature began to shine through. He was playful, yet gentle, smart, but even-tempered, affectionate without being overly dependent. Perhaps most remarkable of all, he showed no fear or lingering trauma from his near-death experience. It seemed that what he had endured only made him more resilient. The bond between Lisa and Max deepened with each passing day. Although she had initially planned to help rehome him after his recovery, it soon became clear that they were inseparable. Max had chosen Lisa just as much as she had chosen to save him. He isn't just a medical miracle, Lisa reflected during one of Dr. Williams's checkups. He's taught me that nothing is ever truly hopeless. In my nursing career, I've seen so much loss, but Max proved that life is always possible if you fight for it. News outlets soon picked up Max's story, and it quickly spread online. Videos capturing his recovery, his first shaky breaths, his cautious steps, and eventually his playful puppy energy touched millions of people worldwide. His journey became a powerful symbol of resilience, second chances, and the refusal to surrender to despair. Veterinary students began studying what became known as the Max Protocol, a combination of controlled rewarming, adapted CPR, and intensive monitoring. Emergency clinics across the country soon incorporated variations of Lisa's approach when treating severe hypothermia in animals. Beyond veterinary medicine, shelters also began updating their policies, improving emergency response measures, and dedicating more resources to protecting abandoned animals in harsh winter conditions. 6 months after being left for dead in the snow, Max had grown into a healthy, lively 35-pound adolescent dog with no lasting effects from his ordeal. His case reshaped veterinary practices, inspired new rescue efforts, and proved that miracles can happen when knowledge meets determination. 2 years later, that once lifeless puppy had grown into a strong, majestic 75-pound German Shepherd whose story was still changing lives. But the true miracle wasn't simply that Max had survived, it was that his survival created ripples that saved countless other animals. The Max Protocol was formally adopted by the American Veterinary Medical Association as the standard for treating severe hypothermia in young animals. Clinics across the nation reported a 340% increase in successful recoveries. Dr. Williams estimated that Max's case alone had directly led to saving more than 200 animals in similar circumstances. Lisa unexpectedly rose to prominence in the veterinary field, becoming a frequent speaker at conferences where she shared insights on emergency animal care and the importance of refusing to give up, even when the odds looked impossible. She often appeared alongside Max, who would charm and inspire audiences with his vitality and joyful personality, a living example of resilience. Max represents the pure will to survive, Lisa would explain. He was closer to death than most creatures ever get without crossing that line. But inside his body and spirit was a determination to live. It only needed someone to believe in it. The criminal case against Brad Hensley ended with a conviction for animal cruelty. His punishment included jail time, mandatory service at animal shelters, and a permanent ban on owning pets. Beyond that, the case inspired stricter penalties for animal abandonment in Minnesota and later influenced similar laws across other states. Yet the most touching outcome involved the Thompson family, Max's original owners. Drawn back into the story by the media attention, they were reunited with the puppy they thought was gone forever. Sadly, their situation hadn't changed. Their rental still didn't allow dogs. But instead of losing Max again, a new arrangement blossomed. Lisa welcomed the Thompsons as part of Max's extended family, allowing them to visit often and take part in his care. Now Max belonged to two families, Lisa, who was his guardian and medical protector, and the Thompsons, who had never stopped loving him. Max also found a new calling as a therapy dog. In hospitals and nursing homes, his story gave hope to patients fighting their own battles. Children, in particular, seemed to understand him in a unique way. They sense his joy and energy, Lisa noted during one visit, and they recognize that surviving something terrible can make you stronger rather than weaker. Max's impact went far beyond emotional inspiration. His survival sparked new scientific research into hypothermia in young mammals, which improved emergency care protocols in veterinary medicine. His case became part of medical training, used to show how unconventional thinking and refusing to accept defeat could produce remarkable results. On the second anniversary of his rescue, Lisa and Max returned to her backyard, the place where their journey began. Now a strong, healthy adult, Max sniffed the ground where he had once lain nearly lifeless in the snow. He showed no fear, no memory of that trauma. For him, that bitter morning had simply marked the start of a life overflowing with love, meaning, and happiness. Standing there, Lisa reflected on how a single decision not to accept the obvious had changed so many lives. Max, taught her that miracles are not supernatural. They are the outcome of persistence, knowledge, and the refusal to give up. The puppy, who was once written off as lost, became a beacon of hope, proving that broken things can heal and that hopeless moments can transform into the most beautiful stories. His journey from the brink of death to a life full of energy and purpose stands as proof that miracles happen when science and compassion work together. What began as a heartbreaking discovery in the snow evolved into a story that reshaped veterinary medicine, saved countless animals, and gave encouragement to people facing their own impossible battles. It's a reminder that life is tougher than we imagine, and sometimes what looks like the end is really the beginning of something extraordinary. Lisa's refusal to give up created a ripple of change that still continues. Max's journey demonstrates the power of perseverance and compassion, showing that even in the darkest circumstances, with the right care and determination, recovery and hope are possible.